Hello, Toy Collector fans, Universal Toy Collector here, and welcome to the channel. And welcome to another episode of my childhood toy memories. Okie dokie then. So welcome to another episode of my childhood toy memories, the series where I get to chat with members of the YouTube toy collecting family about certain toys they had as a child and the different memories or like certain memories that those toys bring back for our guests. Today, I'm joined by the lovely Kat Knight. Hello, Kat. How are you? Let's just move you over there like so.
Oh, I'm very well, Stu. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Tell me, Kat, have you been enjoying this hot weather, or are you not a hot weather person?
I'm okay with hot weather. I spent a long time working in catering kitchens, so for
Okay.
me,
Yeah.
being hot is like the norm. I don't like the rain much, and it seems to
No.
be raining here the last few days. So yeah,
It has turned quite wet down this end of the country as well. But, Kat, as you know, we're not here to talk about past jobs. We're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about your childhood toys. So, what have you got for us? So, just to let you know at home, we don't have any pictures today, but Kat does have bits and bobs to hand, which is awesome. So, Kat, let me enlarge you like so. Kick us off, Kat. What we got?
Okay. The very first toy that I can sort of remember having that I really, really wanted, and I think I've spoke about this before, is my little Weebles.
I
And I've got a
remember
whole
those.
couple of them.
Oh,
And Coxie kindly sent me some with a little roundabout, which you can just see in the background, and a little
yeah,
slide.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I had those when I was about 5 years old, and I always
Wow.
remember them because my mom's dog ate one.
Oh,
Um,
God.
and we never did find out what happened to that Weeble. But yeah, that was
Wow.
yeah, very poor dog. But yeah. So those are my Weebles. I loved my Weebles.
So, I mean, obviously, you've got, are those your childhood ones that you've got there?
They're not. No, there's
No.
some that I came across. I was actually looking for toys for Keith, and just sort of did a vintage search, and they came up, and I was like, "Oh my god, Weebles!" And you know yourself, it's one of those things. You see something, and it just unleashes all
Yeah,
those
yeah,
memories that you
yeah,
had from when you
yeah.
played with those things as a kid.
That's
Another good thing about Weebles was that if you threw them at somebody, they really hurt.
yes, they did. They really did. Yeah, I do remember the Weebles because I think they were around when I was blimey, in
I'm not
my
that old,
early
Stu.
years. No, I didn't. I wouldn't suggest such a thing, Kat. I'm just saying I remember them when I was younger. So yeah. I mean, what was it? I mean, so with the Weebles, then were they like gifts, Christmas presents, birthday presents, or was it something that you just saw when you went out like to the shops or something like that and thought
They would have definitely been Christmas presents. I was
yeah.
sort of quite unlucky. My birthday's at the end of November, so it
Oh,
was during the
yeah.
time that Mum was hastily saving up everything for Christmas, and she'd sort of already
Oh,
started the sort of Christmas collecting at the local toy shop and things like that. You know, where you could go in with your little card and put your £2 down a week or whatever. So I was always promised as a kid that I'd get a little birthday present, where I'd get the big present at Christmas and together.
I suppose you were happy with that. It was like fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair
I was
enough.
quite an
Yeah.
easygoing child, to be fair. So
Yeah,
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 fine.
yeah. Cool. And I mean, so I remember the line. I remember seeing Weebles, but I know nothing about it. Was it a big line? I mean, was you really into it? Did you have many? All those
Yeah,
costumes?
'cause they would come in like they came. I remember it came in like a big box,
Yeah.
and you had like the mum, the dad, the nan, the kids, and bizarrely there was a dog one and an elephant one because you know every
Oh,
family has a pet elephant.
yeah,
And I've said before, you know, I'm a bit elephant mad. So for me, it was the fact that this family had an elephant. It's like I couldn't
yeah,
understand why we couldn't
yeah.
have one, but um so yeah, and it was I was quite fastidious with toys when I was a kid. So when I finished playing with them, they would go back in the box until obviously the dog ate them, ate the one, and then it was like for me it was like personally ruined. But and
Oh,
I don't actually remember whatever happened to them, which is quite sad.
oh,
Yeah.
gosh. Wow. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I remember like a lot of my toys, they sort of like went by the wayside, or they got moved on, or they just got chucked away. And I
Mm.
think that's a real shame. Because I think personally, I'd have liked to have kept some of my original childhood toys. So with when you saw those Weebles, it was a real nostalgia buzz, I'm guessing, and it was one of those feelings where you think, yeah, I'd remember these, and just seeing them and feeling them again, I guess, must have been,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, I think it's that thing of it was like I say, it's the first toy that I can actually remember asking for. Obviously, had
okay,
toys before that, but I think it was the
yeah,
first one that I really wanted and actually got. So it was like, they were like jewels for me. They were, my prized possessions. They went everywhere with me, tucked under my little arm. So
yeah.
yeah, they were yeah.
Did,
It's just
no, go on, sorry.
I was just gonna say it's one of those things that like I say, I think I'd forgotten all about them until I saw them in that advert, and it
Yeah,
was wow, that and a lot of us have said it's that feeling, that emotion that's associated with the toy. It's not necessarily the toy, it's that smile that you get when you pick them up and you remember sort
yeah.
of 5-year-old you get, absolutely doing your fruit because you got a box of Weebles.
Did they? I mean, you said you've got like a small play set behind you there, the slide and stuff like that. I mean, was it like a? Did you have lots of play sets? Because again, I can't remember the play sets and stuff like that.
I didn't, and I don't know if they came originally with play sets. I think to begin with it was just the figures, because originally they
Yeah.
came out, they were Airfix that made them, and I think it was
Oh, okay.
literally just the plastic figures. I think that sort of as the generations of Weebles changed over the years, I think that's when play sets and things came out. Because the original ones, actually, if you can see in comparison, the original ones are actually smaller
Okay.
than the later editions, and that's because
Yeah.
the little ones were easy to swallow. And I think it was when
Right.
they went over to America that they made them slightly bigger.
Right.
Because I think it's still a thing now, isn't it, with Kinder eggs in America where
Yeah.
you can't buy them. I think it was they made them bigger, and that's when they bought out the play sets and everything else, because I suppose they recognised that that children weren't just happy to watch them wobble and not fall down.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and are they easy to come by these days?
yeah, yeah. I
They
mean,
are.
I got a bag of, I think there was half a dozen, and I think they're about 20 quid. So yeah, there's plenty of them out there. And again, they still make them, but they make them now. They're made by Play School now, and they make
Oh,
them sort of
wow.
yeah. And the ones that
Wow.
you get now are sort of painted, and you can get sort of like more caricature ones like cats, dogs, and
Yeah.
things like that. And they're much more they're not quite as spooky and as strange as the ones we
Yeah.
had back in the good old
Yeah.
1970s. Because some of them, I mean, I think if I gave that to my 4-year-old granddaughter, she'd run screaming, wondering what
I've
was
got
wrong
to
with the
say,
toy.
it's a weird looking toy line because you see a lot of the toy lines that we've seen, in this series, like My Little Pony, Care Bears, or
Yeah.
Bratz, or My Little Pony, or Pet Shop, or whatever you want to call them. They're quite cutesy, aren't they? Those kind of
Mhm.
toys. These things are like not the sort of like the cutest looking things in the world, are they? What was
No,
the appeal for them then, with when it comes to you collecting them and liking them?
I really I think it was there was a lot of advertising, and I think like most things, the advertising, and everyone remembers the line Weebles wobble but they don't fall down, and it was just that, it was that sort of like you could sort of like stick them all together and you could bash them against each other and whatnot, and they would always stand up.
This is
So
true. This is true. You wouldn't have any issues with them falling over on the shelves, would you? So
no, very,
so
very,
the big question, Kat.
yeah,
Keith is doing his Shabbyville Playmobil town.
yeah.
Are you going to be doing your Weeble town?
No,
No. Okay.
no, I have Horror Town. I don't need Weeble Town.
Okay.
And I suppose technically he does fit in with Horror Town, doesn't he? With his strange eyes and his lack of colour. But no,
What, Keith
I
or the Weeble? Is that Keith
I
or the
can
Weeble?
leave that up to the viewers. Although to be fair, Keith does weeble and he does wobble, but he does fall down, unfortunately.
Poor bug.
But yeah,
Oh.
and he's not quite as scary looking. He's getting there, but not quite. So no, I think for me it was just having them to remember about my childhood. I can't see me, having a his and hers shed in the back garden, to sort of see if I could outdo him.
Yeah. No, fair enough. So before you saw these then at a toy fair, would you? I guess you kind of like had put them to the back of your mind. You hadn't been actively looking for them, I guess.
No, and I've never bought them for my children either, which really is sort of strange if you think about it, because you tend
Yeah,
to
yeah,
sort of buy for your children the kind of things that you had when you were a child. But no, and like I say, they'd completely gone out of my mind, and it was purely by chance, and it was like, but yeah, I do like them. I do think they're quite cute.
if you see more, would you get more, or are
If
you
there were
quite happy
ones
with
that I
what you've
haven't
got?
got, then
Oh, right,
maybe.
yeah, okay.
But like I say, you could. I think they're another, vintage figure sort of thing that you could go on forever and ever and ever. But the actual
Yeah.
ones from the 1970s, the Airfix ones, the original ones, I think there was only 10.
Oh,
And
right,
that was all
okay.
the boss. Yeah, yeah.
Have you got those 10 now then, or
I have. Yeah,
yeah?
yeah. Thanks to
Okay.
Coxie, I have. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's that. Again, I find this unbelievable, the longevity of that toy line, because they're still
Mm.
making them, it's still going. That's a good 50 odd years, isn't it? That these toys have been in sort of like around, and I wouldn't have thought that. And I guess it's a bit like Barbie. Barbie's seems to be going around forever
Yeah,
as well. She's been going for a long time and stuff like that.
she has.
So
She has.
that is incredible. They are the weirdest toys I think I've ever seen. They really are, but they're so cool. Did they do like cars and stuff like that as well for them?
Yeah. But again, that was in the sort of later iteration. It wasn't in the
Right.
originals. Yeah, but yeah, you can
Yeah.
get cars for them. You can get all sorts from Weeble houses and all sorts. But they do actually fit quite well into the Little People line of things that have got sort of the depressed seats.
Right. Okay.
Obviously,
Yeah.
their little weebly bottoms will sit in those quite nicely. So I know
Wow.
Keith has got a couple of fairground things in his shed that might go missing.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say Keith had a wibbly bottom, but
No, we
we'll,
won't go there.
we'll move on. So that is awesome. So what have you got next? What else did you have as a child?
Well, when growing up, my dad was an engineer and my mum was a teacher. And my mum was in the 1970s. There was a whole drive for educational toys for children, and so obviously you had things like Speak and Spell, the Little Professor, things like that to sort of like that would. I suppose it was the early versions of the Leap Pad toys that you've got nowadays.
Yeah.
I have still got my little Professor,
Oh my
which
god.
was a math toy to teach you all about
Wow.
math, and it was
Wow.
like the world's weirdest calculator. It does still
Look
work,
at that.
and it would give you little sums.
Yeah.
When you got them right, the little professor on the end would sort of wiggle his moustache to tell you that you got them right, and they would get. You had sort of different grades where they got sort of harder and harder as you went on. But yeah, just to sort of like sit you down and play maths.
How long did you like sit and play with that for? Like a few minutes, a couple of hours, or?
I would play with that for hours and hours. And to be fair, I think it probably did me well because I am quite good at maths and really good at basic arithmetic and stuff like that. But yeah,
So am I, cat. So am I.
it's just weird to think that that was considered a toy, a garish calculator.
Yeah, that is weird, isn't it? It's I mean, I do find back then that a few of the toys were quite educational and stuff like that, but I've not seen one of those. I don't even recall seeing that. So when was that first out, that calculator, Mr. Professor?
I had it in sort of. I must have had it in about 1977. So I would imagine that they've been around for a couple of years by then for my mum's buy. I know neither my elder brother nor my elder sister had one. So I'm guessing it was round about that era, or they became more affordable round about then. But I always wanted the Speak and Spell, but I never got that. And sad to say, my spelling's atrocious. So
Join the club. But I guess back then that would have been seemed as quite technical, wouldn't it? I guess,
Yeah.
like a little gamepad or something like that. Like the Nintendo Game Boy or whatever you want to call them these days.
Yeah, definitely. So,
and it's really weird because. I mean, were you into that kind of thing, the gaming side of things and stuff like that, or were you more hands-on and playing?
My dad was a gadget king, and he bought an Atari when they very first came out. And I can remember sort of sitting there, and I was the queen of Space Invaders. I could, there was another one that I can't think of the name of it. It'll come to me.
I remember Centipede. I remember Centipede.
Yeah. No, Missile Command and Space
Okay,
Invaders,
yeah.
because I had really good reflexes, probably from playing my calculator.
Yeah.
And yeah, so my dad quite liked playing those games with me, because I sort of challenged him, whereas my brother had crap sort of hand-eye coordination. So
I mean, did you have much family time then playing on those kind of games then?
we played a lot of board games. I'm one of four. I'm the third of four children.
Right.
And there's two years between me, my older brother, and then 2 years between him and my older sister.
Yeah.
But then there's 4 years between me and my younger brother. So we were
Right.
all sort of similar age groups. So I think, it's sort of with money being tight, things like that. We got a lot of board games at Christmas because we could all play together. And obviously, we had the fantastic arguments that went with that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
dear.
it was
Yeah.
good fun.
Yeah, I remember Monopoly. That was always a game that would start an argument with me and my sisters. So, I mean, have you seen that toy or that little calculator since the 70s? Because like I say, I didn't know it existed, and I don't think I've seen it. Mind you, I don't consciously look for those kind of things. So, did you see many of those about at all, or not really now?
I don't think they still sell them new, because I think technology has moved on, and you've got things like the Leap pads and stuff like that for children now. But yeah, like I say, it's very much the era. And there was a music one as well. And I can't, Major Minor or something like that you could play, that it would play a tune and you had to remember it and play it back. So along the lines of the Simple Simon and things like that. Those type games. So we had a lot of those type games. But again, back in the 1970s, once toys ran out of batteries, you were hard pressed to get your mom to buy you any more.
Yeah, God, blimey. I mean, were batteries included? Because a lot of the toys now, it says batteries not included, doesn't it? Especially this day and age. Yeah, they were included.
Yeah, I think that's because they're made abroad, and there's the thing about shipping with batteries in, isn't there? So I think that's why you don't tend to get batteries included, because I think going back to when my children were young, you'd buy things and it would have like the tester batteries in, like the sort of batteries that would last you till Boxing Day if you were lucky.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So what else have you got to show us, Kat?
Show not much, but I was going to talk about sort of the dolls of the era, because
Go ahead. Yeah,
I had an impressive range of Cindy dolls, because again, my mom, sort of when we were very young, we weren't, the only dolls that we could have were like the baby dolls, and we were taught to make clothes and things like that from me and my sister. I remember that being sort of the thing. And it wasn't until we got a bit older that mom would let us go into sort of the fashion dolls, but she would never have Barbie in the house. I think she had a real thing about Barbie. I think she thought that there was no way that Barbie would ever be able to stand up in the real world. So we could have Cindy, because Cindy was a bit more modestly proportioned in my mum's mind.
Right, so, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had numerous Cindys between us, me and my sister, and I think we ended up with the horse and the sort of furniture. I remember there being a very mustard coloured bath that Cindy had, and sort of like all the clothes and everything else, and lots of shoes that my dad used to curse at standing on. Because they didn't fit him. Who knew? And obviously, because we had Cindy's, we would steal my brother's Action Man, which would really annoy him. So the favourite thing to do was to steal Action Man when he wasn't there and put him in a dress.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Which drove my brother batty.
Have you ever thought of getting any of Keith's Action Men and putting them in a dress?
Well, funnily enough, going back some time, he did put that Madness fez that he's got. He put it on my big Pennywise. And I was rather unimpressed. So I went out at Christmas, and the little elf on a shelf where you can get outfits for him now. And one of the outfits that he had was a fluffy purple sort of pimp coat. And then there was this like pink dressing gown. So he came down one morning to find that a couple of his Action Men that were sort of right at the back of the shelf had been dressed in those. Not happy, but he never did anything to Pennywise again.
No, I can imagine. It's really weird you saying about Cindy, because I've not spoken to many people that have sort of like collected Cindy, it's either been Barbie or other bits and bobs. I mean,
Mhm.
in my eyes, I mean, I find them quite similar anyway. So Barbie was just Cindy was just, you know, another kind of Barbie sort of toy. I mean, I guess you get all the accessories the same as you did with Barbie. You get all the clothes, the different clothes, accessories. You get the, you know, like you said, the horse. I mean, did they do a car? Did they do houses? I mean, was the line as big as Barbie for Cindy?
Oh, definitely, definitely. A lot of Keith's sort of fire engines that he scratch built for Action Man, they started off as Cindy Range Rovers.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's
Yeah, so
interesting. Yeah,
so
cool.
she was, I think, because she was slightly better proportioned than Barbie. I think the Cindy vehicles made better vehicles for Action Man than the Barbie ones did. Barbie
Right,
tended to be just a tiny bit smaller.
right.
Um, so yeah, so yeah, but you could get I don't remember her having a dream house like Barbie did, but yeah, all the
Right.
outfits and everything else you could get for her.
Yeah.
And I think uh, growing up, we were quite lucky. We had a brilliant toy shop by us, and it was sort of over 2 floors, which you know wasn't such a big thing then. And it was sort of downstairs you had all the sort of boys toys and the family toys, and
Yeah.
then upstairs you had all the dolls and things like that. And they used to have like massive displays of all the Cindy stuff. And I don't
Oh,
actually remember seeing an awful lot of Barbie. So whether we were just very conservative in where I
yeah.
grew up, I don't know. But yeah, it was very much Cindy rather than Barbie.
Do you miss that going into a toy store and especially in the UK where they used to, like you said, you go in and they had a massive display, whether it be, you know, Cindy or My Little Pony or like the boys stuff, they had the big displays downstairs in the boys department, stuff like that. Do you miss that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, because I think these it's like you're not back then you were encouraged because there'd be toys open, wouldn't there? And you could pick them up and you could see what they did. You could see how
Yeah,
many,
yeah,
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 what the articulation was like, how they moved. You know, you knew that if that toy had been out on the shelf for a few months, then it was probably going to sort of last in a child's hands. Whereas now you sort
yeah,
of go and they're in this nice sterile plastic, and it's like half of them break as you're actually taking them out of the box.
yeah,
I think that's where we were quite spoiled as kids. We were able to we were encouraged to pick things up and feel how they felt in our hands and sort of
yeah,
that spark that imagination of I want to take this toy home and carry on playing with it. Whereas now the toys that you seem to some of the toys that you seem to get now are very much once they're opened, part of the actual pleasure of the toy is opening the box. Once that's done, the toy is there's nothing to do with the toy.
yeah,
Um, like
yeah.
these surprise boxes and things like that. Once you've opened it and the surprise is done, it's like, well, okay, what do we do now then?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I remember we had an Army and Navy in Guildford. You know the what do you call it? Department store, Army and
Mm.
Navy and stuff like that. And that was in a local town, and we had like a break at school. So me and a friend, we just walked in, and it was around about Christmas time and stuff like that. So we'd walk into town before next lesson, and we'd just have a look at the toy section and stuff like that because I had to get things from my sisters and stuff like that. And do you remember the Brio train sets they used to have, the wooden?
Yeah.
Well, they had a massive one of those set up, and we started just sat down and just started moving the trains around and building stuff and doing stuff like that. We said, "Well, we better get back to class." We looked at our clock and it was our watches, and it was an hour later.
Oh.
We'd missed class. We would sat there for that long just playing with the trains and stuff like that, and we thought, "Oh well." So it was well worth a detention. But I certainly miss that type of thing, and I think it's such a shame that they don't do that as much as
Mm,
they do or did back then. So whatever happened to Cindy? Because all of a sudden she just disappeared.
she did. I don't know what happened to Cindy. I think all the Cindy collectors grew up and sort of gave them to the next generation, and I don't know why you just don't see her anymore. I think Barbie sort of took over.
Yeah, I mean,
Whether, whether
I don't know if anybody bought her out, but you certainly don't see Cindy in any of the toy
no,
shops anymore, do you? So, I mean, I've
no.
not seen Cindy in absolute age. I think it must have been the 80s that I last saw Cindy.
I wonder if it's because Barbie was more of a global brand, and so they could make her cheaper. So when from a sort of toy buying point of view, a parent is more likely to spend £6 on a doll than £8 on a doll.
Yeah, no,
Um,
there is that. There is that. But I mean, I mean, it. I not a big Barbie fan. I've got to say, I'm impressed with how long she's been going, and I do like some of the things that they're doing with Barbie, with like the Disney princesses and the different characters that you can get with Barbie. I wonder if Cindy had a stayed around and competed a bit longer. I wonder if she would have gone the same route, or they would have gone the same route with Cindy, made them into princesses or different things and stuff like that. Do you think that might have happened, or do you just think it was just a sort of like one of those lines that would have just, don't know?
I think they probably would, yeah, because
Mhm.
that's the way that all little girls seem to go, wasn't it, towards the princesses and the Disney type things. But again,
Yeah.
I wonder if it then goes back to licenses, doesn't it, for these things of whether they'd have got the license to
Well, yeah, true. Yeah, I forgot about that. Absolutely true. I mean, if you went out to, like, say for example, NEC or a toy fair and stuff like that, and you saw a Cindy, would you grab it? Would you say, I had that as a child, but I'll
Yeah,
grab that?
yeah,
You would.
I probably would. That's when for me, when it comes to toys, that's very much what I would do. I tend to get things that I would have had, rather than sort of things that I didn't have as a child. Because obviously
Yeah,
some of the
yeah,
supply collectors, it's like, I really wanted that as a kid, never got it, so now I've got it because I always wanted it. Whereas for me, it's very much like, that's that little bit of my childhood. So yeah, and it would be nice to have a Cindy there. I hadn't cut the hair off, so
gosh, wow, yeah. Just be nice to have hair, to be honest. So when it come to Cindy, do you remember the ones you had? And I'm guessing your sister also collected Cindy as well.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's where parents sort of did it, didn't it? And I think a few people have said, because if one of you was into it, then buying it for two meant that you could play together with those toys. So I
Yeah.
know that I tended to have the dark haired Cindy's, and my sister had the blonde haired Cindy's,
Oh,
simply
okay.
so
Right.
that we couldn't say that one's mine after we'd cut the hair off and things like that. So
Right.
yeah, mom was quite savvy in that respect. She would get us the same sort of things, but subtly different, so that we'd know whose was whose. But it didn't stop us fighting over the clothes and the shoes and all the accessories and things like that. So yeah.
I mean, did it cause many arguments? Because I never had that as a child, and I had loads of arguments with my sisters, but not over toys. But because my sisters obviously had their toys, I had my Star Wars and bits and bobs and stuff like that. So we never sort of like really sort of like took each other's toys and stuff like that. And do you know what I mean? So I mean, was it easy having a sister and sharing and getting on, or
I was quite lucky because although she's sort of 4, almost 5 years older than me, as I was coming into toy lines, there was only a very small crossover as she was growing out of them. So I would then inherit
right?
her
Yeah,
bits of those toys. But Cindy's, I think there was probably about 2 year overlap. Because she was then she would then sort of dress them in different fashions, and she would just have them static on a shelf.
yeah,
I think I had more arguments with my brothers over toys than with my sister over toys. And like I say,
really.
yeah, because my older brother, with it just being the 2 years, like I say, I would steal his Action Men. I remember he had a Sinclair computer, and there was
Gosh,
an
yeah, I
argument
remember
over that because I wanted to play with it and he wouldn't let me. And I remember being smacked around the head with a Hulk, one of those stretchy Hulks.
Oh,
Um,
right. Wow.
and they were full of silicon gel, and they were bloody heavy. And how I never
Was that
ended
the
up with
ones that you used for
it.
weights and you pulled them apart like that? Was it like a chest
No, they were toys, but it was really,
toys?
really when it warmed up, you could really stretch this Hulk
Oh,
into
right.
sort of like really long. But when he was cold, he was
Oh,
absolutely rock
Hulk.
hard.
Hulk.
Hulk, yeah,
As
the
oh,
Incredible
oh,
Hulk.
I thought you said a
Yeah.
hook. I thought you said a hook. Sorry.
Oh
Bloody hell,
no,
I
he
get my
wasn't
ears
quite
done
that
now.
savage.
I was gonna say.
We were wild children, but not quite
Was
that
was it
wild.
was that like a Mr. Bendham type sort of figure?
I think it was more like the Stretch
Stretch arms.
Armstrong.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Apparently, he's quite rare now, and I think my brother was probably wished he'd held on to him instead of smacking the living crap out of me with it. But yeah, so yeah, and so obviously, as revenge, I would take his toys and bury them in the garden where they probably still are now.
Wow, wow. And what was it like for Christmas and birthdays and stuff like that? Was you did you write your lists out and stuff like that for your toys, or was it a lot of them just like a surprise?
It was mostly surprise. I think I've said before, sort of 'cause being born in the 70s, my dad was an engineer, and he was
Yeah,
out of work for a long time with the strikes and everything that were going on in the 70s and the 3-day
yeah,
weeks and things
yeah,
like that. So money was really tight for us as kids. So I think we just learned never to really ask for things, which is why, I said about the Wii balls being such a big thing. So we would quite often get what we got, and we'd be grateful. And it was like, you'd get 2 or 3 presents. It wasn't like, makes me sound about 9 million years old. It wasn't like now where you sort of have, like, halfway up the Christmas tree for toys for children. You'd
yeah,
have 2
yeah,
or 3 items, but there'd be things that you actually cherish. So, mum made me one year a nurse's outfit because, even as a little child, I always wanted to be a nurse. So she'd made me that. And that was absolutely fantastic. And there was a lot of imaginative play and things like that. Mum would make her own Play-Doh. So
yeah,
we'd spend time doing things like that. She would do cooking with me and my sister, and needlework and stuff like that. So we would get things to do with that more than toys, because they were, as I say, educational wise toys. They were
yeah,
toys that would have that level of longevity to them, rather than being you play with them for a couple of weeks and then get
yeah,
bored.
yeah. I find that really interesting you say imaginative play, because I'm looking at it from a boy's point of view, and well, because I'm a boy, and we
Strangely.
used to be soldiers and stuff like that, and we used to pretend we were commandos or in the army, or little things like that. We used to have like build camps and stuff like that, so the imagination was there to do stuff, and I never really sort of took into consideration that girls would do the same thing, but they will probably be doing it in a slightly different sort of like manner, so to speak, with
Yeah.
like you say, dressing up and being a nurse and stuff like that. So, I mean, I mean, when it comes to friends and stuff like that, I mean, did you go out and like play with friends and stuff like that, and you know do the same sort of things and stuff like that, and have the same sort of interests?
Yeah, yeah. You take your favourite doll or your teddy round to like your friend round the corner's house, and you'd have your little tea parties, or you'd play school,
Yeah,
things like that. With all the toys lined up. I was quite bossy even back then. I used to argue with my. I had a talking doll that had the string on the back of her head, and you pull
all
the
right.
string, and say sort of like the key phrases. And apparently, I used to argue the toss with her all the time. So
You
um,
argued with a doll. You argued with a toy doll.
yeah, and sometimes I won. It was great. Um, I think I was just bossy, and then that's something that's stayed with me. But yeah, so we do tea parties and things like that. So I think in that respect, yeah, and I suppose a tea party is camp with manners, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got to say, I've never ever, even though I had like two sisters and stuff like that, I think I was so kind of wrapped up within. I mean, we like I said, we had board games. We did things together as a family and stuff like that. So we never had it wasn't like we never had any family time at all. We did, but I think when it comes to playtime, I was either in my bedroom doing my thing, and the girls were out and doing their thing, or I was round a friend's house and just round there constantly, practically all summer or all weekend, and just doing boys things sort of thing. So to hear a girl's perspective of childhood and stuff like that, and the things that they got, I think it's brilliant, and it's one thing that I never really, like I say, took into consideration. It's so interesting to hear that you've got the same kind of passion and nostalgic feelings about certain things when you were younger that
Mm.
we do, and I think that's absolutely great, and I do think that kind of does get overlooked a little bit, and so it's really nice to have yourself on, and Steph, and who else do we have, Zoe on, and them talk us through their childhood and the toys that they had, and you're doing the same thing, and I just think it's absolutely superb. I really do, and it's yeah, awesome stuff, awesome.
Yeah, and I think and then obviously, because obviously Keith's a big collector, it's sort of, I
Yeah,
can understand why he wants to collect that, because for him that's his childhood memories, and that's fine as long as he does the dusting. It's fine.
oh,
Um,
gosh, yeah. When it comes to that, I mean, would you have classed yourself a collector before you met Keith, or was it just since you've been with Keith that you've started
just
collecting?
since just since I've been with Keith, I've always had, as I said before, I've always had books.
Yeah,
I've always been a massive bibliophile, but never really toys and collectibles. A lot of these are the ones that Keith has bought me for Christmases and things like that, because, as I said earlier, I worked for a long time in pubs, and we would move from one to the other quite regularly.
Right.
So it was a case of you didn't tend to have a lot of stuff because it was just more stuff to pack it and take with you, more chances of it getting lost or broken.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've been in this house now since 2015. So, and this is probably the longest time I've lived somewhere since I left home at 17.
So you're quite happy to set up and display things now then?
Yeah, yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've put down my roots now and staked my claim. So yeah,
Are you enjoying it? The collecting side of things and getting back into your toys, or I mean, even your horror stuff like that. I mean, you know, it is good fun in it.
it is, and and I think there's obviously a lot more stuff out there now than there was sort of years ago anyway. So it's like
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
spoil yourself that little bit more. And it's like, and I think obviously knocking about with the lovely gang that we have on
yeah,
in the toy community, I think you sort of see things that they've got and you think, oh God, I really like that. And then you have to go and get that. And then because you've got that one, you have to go and get something else that goes with it. And that's the slippery slope that you have to try not to become a toy hoarder.
yeah. Well, gosh, yeah, there is that as well. There is that. I mean, but did you ever see yourself like being a collector? Would you have ever imagined, like in your sort of like you, because there's always comes a time where you kind of get to the age where, kind of grown out of toys now. I'll put them aside and I go off and start doing like adult type sort of things. Going out to the, I don't know, the theatre or going to the pub or something like that. I mean, at that age, did you ever think that you would get back into toys and then start collecting toys, or was that the furthest thing from your mind?
Probably the furthest thing from mine. I went through. I mean, when I say I've never been a collector, I've got a massive collection of shoes, and I've also got the world's
Okay,
biggest
yeah.
collection of kitchen gadgets.
Oh, okay.
So,
Fair enough.
so
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So although I don't have like the biggest collection of toys, the kitchen has got every gadget known to man in it. And then some because I'm left-handed as well, so I have to have the left-handed version of things just to sort of
right.
stake the
Okay.
claim. Make things awkward for Keith when he's trying to open a tin of beans at like 4 o'clock in the morning. With a left-handed tin opener. It's great fun. But yeah, so yeah, although it's not a great collection of toys, but a big collection of gadgets. So I suppose it's in all of us. We've all been collectors. We just didn't
Yeah,
realise.
yeah, yeah, yeah. True, true. So
And I think
after, oh, sorry, go on, please carry on.
I just and as you get older, I think, and again, it's you know yourself. If you've got your own children, you tend to buy toys for them, and you might sort of like set them up and play with them on Christmas Eve and stuff like that for them, just to be kind.
Yeah,
But you don't ever think of, oh, I'd really like that for myself. And my children haven't really kept any of their toys from when they were children, apart from my son, who's got a very strange collection of Star Wars Mr. Potato Heads that he had.
oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's
my son's
unique.
really into Star Wars. I mean, he's 32,
Wow.
which makes me feel very old. But yeah, so he was really into Star Wars as a kid, and they're things that he's kept. He's still got his Darth Tater and
Okay.
and,
Oh,
and
wow.
Luke Skywalker. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So after Cindy, you said there's other, were there other dolls that you were into?
I had and my dad won it in a raffle. My dad sort of used to go to the social club on a Sunday lunchtime, and there was always a raffle. He'd always buy a ticket. And he came home the one day with a black baby doll, and he was like, "What the hell? Who would have donated this?" It's sort of 1975. You just didn't see that sort. And I
Yeah.
loved it to the extent that when my mom told me that she was having my little brother, and she sort of said, "Oh, what would you like?" Meaning a brother or a sister. I actually said, "Can we have a black one?" Which
God.
was sort of freaked my dad out a bit as he was, this pasty man with ginger hair. He's like, "Oh no,
Wow.
we can't."
Wow. Wow. Bless you.
And it was the first boy baby doll that I'd ever seen as well. So it was, that was really like weird. I think that was the first
Really?
time I actually realised that there was probably a difference between boys and girls.
Oh
Again,
God.
going back to
Oh.
the
I
educational of
mean,
it.
Mikey. I mean, did they do many boy dolls? Because I don't remember any at all. It was all predominantly all girls, wasn't it? Like baby girls and stuff like that.
Mm.
And you used to get
Well,
the
they
dummy
were
in the mouth and stuff like
quite
that. And
androgynous, weren't they? You couldn't really tell apart from the fact that they had like big eyelashes and
bigger
sort of
eyelashes.
fluffy
Yeah.
curly hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was the only one of my friends that had it, and I was quite proud of the fact that I used to get more invites, and they'd be like, "Bring your doll."
Oh, Wow. Have you still got said doll, or has that gone?
No, I haven't got said doll. I again, I'm not quite sure what happened to said doll.
Oh,
When I left home at 17, I literally sort of like I had a massive row with my dad and left, and that was it. And never went back.
oh, blimey.
So yeah, so a lot of my childhood stuff got left there, and I mean they still lived in that house up until oh, about 4 or 5 years ago. So, but then when they downsized to a bungalow,
Yeah.
they left a lot of the stuff there. They just had to pay for somebody to go and clear the house. So there's probably thousands of pounds worth of toys that were
Wow.
in the back
God.
of cupboards that got thrown away.
Wow. What else? What else took your interest as a child?
Um, I loved the dress up, as I say. My mum was
Yeah.
quite good, so she would make costumes for me and my sister. We had nurses. Trying to think of some of the other ones we had. We had sort of different princess dresses and things like that. She made me an absolute spot on knockoff copy of Princess Diana's wedding dress, which was absolutely
Oh,
brilliant. But
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
hard to go out playing. I think I spilled blackcurrant cordial down it after about
Oh,
3 weeks, which drove her potty.
oh,
But yeah, and yeah, so a lot of, I say, a lot of educational dress up play, things like that. Really, when we were kids, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Anything else?
um, no, quite boring, really.
No, don't be silly. Don't be
This is going
silly.
to be the shortest episode you've done.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I just find it interesting. I'm just a nosy git, really. I
Oh,
just like listening to people's stories of their like the childhood and the toys that they sort of like collected and stuff like that. And I mean, if are you would you say when it comes to the toys of your childhood, would you say you were quite nostalgic over them and stuff like that? Did you have a connection to those toys and stuff like that?
yeah, yeah, and I think for some children as well, and I've mentioned it before. My mum had made me this elephant shaped cushion that I used to take everywhere, and I've still got that love of elephants now. And it's that always reminds me of that cushion, and it always reminds me of my mum. Um, and I think having that sort of nostalgia, it's more the feeling of how you felt as a child, and sort of you would whisper your secrets to your toys, wouldn't you? If you were sad,
Yeah,
you'd tell your toys how unfair the world was and things like that. So I think for that respect, I think the toys that we had as children actually played a big part in like our mental health and things like that, which is a bit of a bizarre angle to take, but bear with me. Whereas children's toys now, because they speak back to you, they've got the flashing lights, you don't have to use that in much imagination. I don't think you ever get that bond with them that we ever had with our toys, and they don't become part of you. They don't become, your little doll that you would take
yeah,
everywhere with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
You see younger children with maybe a cuddly or things like that, but when children get to sort of like 5, 6, 7, you rarely see them walking around with a toy. Whereas I think our generation, we did. Everywhere we went, we had a toy with
I,
us.
I, I, I will agree with that. I think you're absolutely spot on there when it comes to like especially mental health and stuff like that. But I also think as well because we used our imagination a hell of a lot. I
Mhm,
found that helped me in like um, English and stuff like that when it comes
mhm,
to writing and stuff like that because we had to write different stories and stuff like that. So because of the imagination that I had as a child when it comes to playtime, I could write some of that not very well, but I could write that kind of thing down
mhm,
on paper and put my imagination into words and stuff like that to
mhm.
do like a short story and stuff like that for English. But I think you're absolutely spot on. I think as well when it comes to mental health, I think we because we didn't have the laptops back then, did we? We
Mhm.
didn't have game consoles, we didn't have the internet and stuff like that. And I think you know that playtime I think was important because it did us the world of good. I think definitely. And like you say, the toys now they talk back to you. They can do everything and stuff like that. And I think a lot of kids that go online as well it can be the internet can be a great place, but it can also be an awful place as well, isn't it? With online bullying and all that sort of stuff going on as well. So I just, and then social media, that doesn't help either, because we didn't have social media back then, did we? So we were
Quite
quite,
luckily for some of us, I think.
yeah, yeah, God, absolutely. And and you wonder why there's a high rate of people with mental health issues this day and age, because no matter what you do or where you go, you've got social media, and there's always some kind of tragedy going on in the world, or some kind of bad news going on in the world and stuff like that, or there's a war going on. And I don't want to get too political, but do you know
No,
what I
no.
mean? It all adds up, and it all leads to,
Yeah,
no wonder there's a lot of depression going on this day and age.
yeah.
And it's not just younger children, it's in adults as well, isn't it? So,
Mm. Yeah,
but
very
I
much.
cherish
Very
my
much so.
playtime. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, children now tend to walk around with a mobile phone more than anything else. You know,
yeah,
I can,
yeah,
I can remember, again, makes me sound like a dinosaur. If we wanted to phone somebody when I was sort of like 5 or 6, we'd have to go to the phone box at the end of the road, because I don't think we had
yeah,
a landline installed until sort of like right at the end of the 1970s, beginning of the early 80s.
yeah,
Because not everybody had a phone, because, well, my
yeah.
mum didn't
Take your
need one
10 pence
because
now,
her
didn't
mum
you?
lived
Take
down the
your 10
road
pence
and
now.
her brother lived
Yeah,
up the road, and
yeah. But I just, yeah, I think it's mad. I mean, we are the generation that are lucky enough to experience life
Mm.
without the internet and social media,
Yeah.
and also life with the internet and social media.
Mhm.
And as much as I love doing this type of thing, and I think if social media and the internet were used for the right reasons and stuff like that, I don't have a problem with it. But I think there's just so much that goes on that isn't great, and I not really, I wouldn't have worried about that. I'd be quite happy living life without the internet. I mean, I had a happy childhood. I really did, and I mean, I'm assuming that with your friends and your toys and stuff like that, you had a relatively happy childhood life without internet and social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose you don't miss what you never had, do you?
Well, no, this is true. This is true. But and it's really weird. I went out the other day and I left my phone behind. I was like, oh my god, I felt naked without it. Like, oh no,
Mm.
I haven't got my phone. And then those days you had to remember telephone numbers, didn't you, or have them written
Mhm.
down in a book, because they weren't just automatically there. You just couldn't,
Yeah.
And I know times change and stuff like that. But I think the 70s, well, maybe the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then probably 90s. I think they were just great times and stuff like
Mm.
that.
It's funny because, I mean, my older two children were born at the beginning of the 90s,
Yeah,
and then my third child, my youngest daughter, she was born in 2002. So there's
yeah,
quite a gap between them, and just the generation of toys that the older two had compared to what she
yeah,
had.
yeah,
They were poles apart, because she was very much the leap pads and the things that you press, and the books that would talk to you and things like that. Whereas the older two had more of the sort of the imaginative toys. And yet my son's a software engineer, and my daughter is massively into books, and she reads things, and she's a huge collector. She collects a lot of the Harry Potter stuff,
okay,
which Keith enables her with, a bit too much. But yeah, so she's a massive toy collector, and she will, because that's when Harry Potter first came out in the 90s, and it was my mum that
yeah,
introduced her to the books and would read the books to her when she was little.
wow,
And she's carried that on, and she's now in her 30s, and she's still got that love, and she's still got her toys. She's still got things that she had, when she was a child, that are
yeah,
related to Harry Potter. So
that is
she's
awesome.
probably the biggest toy fan, actually, out of the whole family, because she's still got some of her originals.
Yeah, no, cool. And what about, let's just no, you're okay like that. What about your horror? What got you into horror?
Getting books. My mum
Yeah,
would take us to the library, and it would be, go and get your books and everything else. And I don't know quite how it happened. I think a book had been misshelved, and I picked it up, and it was a Stephen King book, and I would have been about 13, and it was, I picked up The Shining,
oh, okay, that explains it.
and I read it, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And my mom was a bit like, oh, I don't think you should really be reading that. It's going to give you nightmares. And it was like, but my dad was a bit more liberal, and he was a bit like, back then, when you only got like your sort of 4 TV channels, you had to watch what your parents were watching, because you didn't have a
Yeah,
TV. And my dad would
yeah,
quite sort of like happily stick on, a horror film or something like that, and he wouldn't think until he turned around, and we were all like, no nails. So I don't think we were quite as perhaps shielded as we could have been from things like that. But yeah, James Herbert and Stephen King books were a huge thing. And then
Yeah.
obviously the films came out, got into the films. I still collect Stephen King now. I've got his latest one. He's on pre-order. That's due to come out in October.
Wow.
So yeah, it will be a very sad day for me when anything happens to Stephen King. That's when you'll see me fall apart.
And do you actually still buy the books, or
Yeah.
do you get them on the Kindle and read them on the Kindle?
No, I've got
No.
every single first edition that Stephen King has ever done. I've even got a couple of signed copies of
That is
Stephen King's books. Yeah.
awesome. Wow. I mean, there's a collection in itself, isn't it? The books and stuff like
Mm,
that. Did
yeah.
Stephen King do The Rats?
No, that's James Herbert.
James Herbert. Okay, right. I didn't know who. I thought it might be Stephen King. So I've read The Rats.
Mhm.
There's a trilogy of books, wasn't there? There's The Rats, Domain, and I can't remember the other one. There's
No, I
three of
can't
them.
remember. Yeah.
But
No, I can't remember.
I was in hospital for 2 weeks. I broke my leg playing football. I was just turning 18. I was absolutely gutted, and I was so bored that I read the 3 books within the space of 2 weeks, and I was like, this is really, really good. And I'd never read anything like that before, sort of thing. So I ended up reading those. So that's a trilogy of books I read. And then the other trilogy of books I read was the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's it. I've read them, and that was back in 2003. I don't normally sort of like read too many books because I tend to read and I doze off. And
I have a Kindle on my phone, and I tend to so I'll read books on sort of on the Kindle. But when it comes to like certain authors, I have to have the hardbacks. Not even paperback, has to be hardback. Has to be a first edition, first print. So it's like I'll get them on the day that they're released, and I've done that now for years and years. And Keith very kindly got me sort of like the very early copies, Carrie and The Shining for Christmases.
wow,
because they were quite pricey, because obviously he was quite unknown then, so there weren't that many printed in first editions.
Yeah.
But
I mean, what got you into books? I mean, have you always liked reading, even at school and stuff like that? Were you heavy into books at school, or is it just something that you've picked up over the years?
No, as I say, mum was very educational. She was an English teacher, so we could all read and write by the time we started school. And she was a prolific reader. We used to joke that she used to go to the library with a tape measure, and she would only get books if they were over a certain size. And so she would just devour books. We grew up with that. We would just read a lot. And it was like, that was the thing. If we ever said, "Oh, Mum, we're bored," go and read a book. So you'd go and read a book. And I don't think it necessarily did us any harm, but apart from eyesight. But but again, I think growing up with those sort of writers has sort of meant that they're the sort of films that were made as we became into adults, which is the films that we like because we read the books. And again, that goes back to what you were saying about imagination, because they were made by people of sort of who are just slightly older than us, just slightly outside of our generation, who had that imagination to dream up these things. And you think of some of the sort of the films, the original Star Wars trilogy and things like that. And then you look at films now, and everyone moans that films now, they're all crap, they're just recycling the same old stories. And it's because people have grown up and they don't develop that imagination that we had. So bring back playing toys, I say.
Absolutely. And just one question before we go, because we come to the top of the hour. See, we can fill the hour out. It's not an issue, is it? It's all good. We've had lots to talk about. It's been good.
Chat,
do you prefer reading the book or watching the film?
Reading the book.
I think the book goes into it more depth, doesn't it, with the feelings of the characters and stuff like that. And I think you get a better sort of like understanding of the character through the book than what you do on a film. And again, the film sometimes is different from the book because you've got to adapt the film.
You never get a 20-minute car chase in the middle of a book, do you?
No, you don't. This is true. But I think with what the books lack, Not the books, what the movies lack with storytelling and stuff like that. I think the music plays a part in the emotion as well, because the music in some movies, you can get that emotion of how someone's feeling just by the music and stuff like that. Whereas you can hear it, whereas you can feel it when you read it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and I think your imagination is always going to be better than any CGI or anything else. And sometimes it's quite disappointing if you've read a book first and you've got, your imagination has come up with the character and the background and the setting, and then somebody makes it into a film and it's not, and they've sort of varied for reasons, for practical reasons, and then it's sort of like, well, actually, that's not right, and you find yourself then just picking holes in it.
It's weird, isn't it? How you build the expectation up, right? This is how I pictured him, and this is what I want to happen, and this is how it's, and this is how I think the character should, be, and blah 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 blah. And it's really weird when it's not, and they've gone totally different, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very annoying, Stu. That's what it is. It's really annoying.
It is, and yeah, I think it's rife in our generation. I really do. A lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, well, the sequel should have been this. They should have done that. They should have done this, that, and blah 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 blah." And we have such high expectations and imagination that nothing sort of like compares to the original movies.
Yeah,
I mean?
and I think unfortunately these days it's like, and don't get me wrong, because I'm all for inclusivity, but I think there's too much pressure now for people to be very inclusive. So you've got to have you've got to have a whole plethora of race of people. You've got to have different backgrounds of people, different.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, for me, when I read a book, I don't think, oh, that character sounds like they might be gay, or that character sounds like they may come from Japan, or for me, it's that person. And I think sometimes that they try too hard when the films get made to make it too.
I've never had an issue. I don't think there ever was an issue. I think that films have been okay over the years and stuff like that, and I think it's just recently that people have made a big song and dance over it, and I don't care. I just want a good, well-written story, a well-acted presentation that we can sit and enjoy and watch and stuff like that. I don't like this superstar sort of like mentality sort of thing that world we're living in today, where everyone's got to be successful just like that, and no effort or training or anything like that. It's just bang, here you go, sort of thing. And and
the X Factor generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kat, let me just do this. No, what am I doing? There you go. There we are. We have come to the top of the hour. Unfortunately, that has come to the end of the conversation. I've found this most fascinating and interesting. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. And the hour did go quite quickly, to be honest with you. And I didn't think anything, or I didn't think otherwise. But where can people find you on social media?
I don't have a massive following on social media. I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, but I don't tend to post a lot. But I do sort of like, I'll leave comments on other people's posts and things like that. I am in like the Instagram group and things like that. But I am, as you will probably attest to, you send me messages on Instagram and it might be a couple of days before I get them, or you might have to give Keith a nudge and say, tell Kat to check her messages.
But, no, that's okay. That's okay. That's all right.
Facebook Messenger is probably the best way to get hold of me. But yeah, I'm on Facebook and
Instagram. I don't pressure people. I just let them reply when they reply, so it's all good. With your permission, would it be okay to leave your social media details in the description below, your Facebook and your Instagram? If not, then I won't do that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. People want to be bored a little bit more, they can go.
Bloody daft bugger. Honestly, thank you so much. It does mean a lot, and I love talking toys, especially childhood toys, and just hearing your memories and stuff like that. I just think it's absolutely great. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you for asking me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Well, there we go. There's another episode of my childhood toy collecting memories with the lovely Kat. So yes, I'm going to leave her social media links in the description below. For those of you who have stayed and watched to the end, thank you very much. It does mean a lot. Thank you. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.